Welcome to the All Means All podcast, brought to you by the Cathedral of the Rockies in Boise, Idaho. This message is part of a sermon series we're calling R.O.I, Reimagine Our Impact, where we examine our giving and learn to live our lives more generously. In today's message, Pastor Duane finishes out the series with the steps to generosity. Throughout this series, we've touched on the moral imperative to be generous, the practical one, and the biblical one, but now we need to learn how to implement these ideas and live a more generous life. Today, on the All Means All podcast.
Good morning, church.
Good morning.
My name is Duane. I'm one of the pastors here. It's been great to have all of our pastors speak on generosity and what it means to be a people who live generosity. And I bet you thought, with an extra hour of sleep, I hope Duane talks about money too, right? So just hold on to that thought. We'll get there in a minute. There is one piece of homework that I want to talk about, which is our friends at Interfaith Sanctuary reached out to me and said, we do have 32 family members that are in our family shelter that are impacted by the SNAP benefits being taken away. And they said, you're our first call because you guys always respond. Is there any chance you could make 32 lunches for the week? And I said, of course. Now, I have no idea how we're going to do that other we're going to gather at 4 o'clock. If you stop at the front desk and say, I want to be a part of that, or I'll buy some bread, or I'll get some peanut butter and jelly, we're going to make sandwiches for Monday and Tuesday, and they can refrigerate those for the first 2 days, and then we'll gather a team to make them for the rest of the week and see what the needs are. It may just be 1 week if the government gets actually to work, and we'll see. It may be a couple weeks, it may be a month, but we said we could stand in the gap with 32 kids and families that are at the family shelter with Interfaith Sanctuary. So we're going to gather at 4 to do the sandwiches. If you want to help out or bring stuff, stop at the front desk, say, I can drop off some peanut butter, some apples, some stuff to put in the bags. It'll only take us a couple minutes. We'll get it done. All right? So let's start with the text in the Gospel of Luke. This is in chapter 12. Jesus is traveling around and some folks encounter him, and Jesus replies with these words in chapter 12 and verse 15. We'll put it on the screen. Let's read it out loud together. These are Jesus' words. Read with me. Then he said to them, watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in abundance of possessions. Life doesn't consist in our stuff. What does generosity look like? Some of you know I've been traveling the Camino de Santiago almost every year for 3 years, but the first time I did it 3 years ago, I walked the entire 32 days on the French route. And it was about halfway through, about day 15 or 16, when I was walking and I was trying to get to this little town, and I'd missed a turn. It had been a hot day. I'm carrying my backpack. I'm a little tired. A friend had stopped their journey on the Camino. Some people walk a day, some people walk a week. That friend had left to go back home, and I'd say goodbye to a friend. And I was looking for my albergue. I couldn't find it. Even after I got into the town, it took about 25, 30 minutes to find this little albergue. I got there, and Peter was one of the people serving. He was from America. He was serving in the albergue, and he said, sign in. I signed my name, and he read my name, and he went, Duane, we have been waiting for you. And I knew he had just read my name. But the generosity of his words in that moment were a gift to my heart. We have been waiting for you. And I must have looked awful because he said, you need a nap and maybe a beer. He said, I'll show you where the closest bar is, but then we need you at 6:30 because you're going to help cook dinner for everybody else. I said, okay. And then, normally when you come to an albergue, you pay up front. And I said, well, how much? And he took a little cigar box, opened it up. It was full of euros. And he said, This is our generosity box. Give what you can, take what you need. And again, wow, take what you need. He was shocked when I took it all, but, need is personal, but then he pointed to the corner of the room and there was kind of a pile of stuff, and he said, that's our generosity corner. He said, you've probably been traveling for a couple weeks now, and maybe you realize you're carrying stuff that you don't need. Maybe you got an extra pair of shoes, and the truth is you don't need it. Maybe anything that you think is too heavy, but might be a gift to someone behind you, leave it. And there was all kinds of stuff, from books to clothing to, stuff to take care of yourself, all kinds of stuff left there because you realize I don't need as much as I thought. And occasionally there was like, oh, but I could use that, right? Generosity. What does generosity look like? Chris Gabriel wrote a book called Wise Generosity. And he says in the book, generosity is the most powerful force for positive transformation in the world. Wow. Centuries of science and philosophy and spiritual teaching affirms that generosity is essentially the virtue we need if we're going to live a well-lived life. But generosity can be like a muscle. If no one's ever taught you to be generous, you've got to start somewhere. And you've got to grow that muscle so it becomes normal. And so it becomes easy to use. That second day after you've done an exercise and you go, oh, I found some muscles I didn't know, I haven't used. Generosity takes a while to become normal. Generosity has the power to reshape our life. So let's go to the story in the book of Luke, in the Gospel of Luke. It starts with this. Jesus is teaching, and he's interrupted when someone comes to him and says, "Teacher, tell my sibling to divide the inheritance with me." It'd be an interesting moment. It's like if someone came here in the midst of the sermon and went, "Hey, my siblings and I have a dispute. We need a little help. Pastor, could you tell them to do what's right?" We'd be like, "Ooh, that's a lot of information, right? Tell my sibling to divide the inheritance with me." And Jesus replied with the words that you read, "Watch out. Be on your guard against greed. Your life is not about your possessions." And then he added, "The ground of a certain rich one yielded an abundant harvest. They thought to themselves, 'What should I do? I have no place to store my crops.'" It's a good question. What should I do with my wealth? Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns. I'll build bigger ones. I'll store my surplus grain. I'll say to myself, 'You had plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry.'" What does generosity look like? Years ago, one of the early authors on generosity, at least in my ministry, was a guy named Ron Blue. Ron Blue wrote a bunch of books about how to manage your money, how to be a good steward, how to be generous. And he says there's only 5 things that we can do with money. He says you can spend it, you can pay debt, you can pay taxes, you can save it, and you can give it. That's it. That's the list. He said that's life. When it comes to money, it's spend it, pay debt, pay taxes, save it, and give it. Spend it, that's me first. That's about me. Pay debt, that's about me. Pay taxes, well, that's government, not really me. Save it, that's about me. Finally, give it, others. And then Ron said, if you live like that, you're not following Jesus because you're putting others last. Whoa. What does it mean to live a generous life? Jesus said, the ground of a certain rich one yielded an abundant harvest. They said to themselves, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then they said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns, I'll build bigger ones, and there I'll store my surplus grain. And I said to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. And Jesus said, and that's when God showed up. God showed up. And he chose one word for this person's life. Fool. You are a fool, God said. For tonight, you will die. And then Jesus added, it's what happens when one chooses the world instead of the ways of God. This is what happens when you fill your barn with yourself and not with God. Fool. Not good steward, not wise manager, not great worshiper, not faithful follower. Never once was the conversation, what could I do for others? How can I make an impact? Some of you know the name Shane Claiborne. Shane is a follower of Jesus. He's part of the Red Letter ministry. When you talk about the words of Jesus, he lives in Philadelphia, but when he was a younger guy, he traveled to Calcutta, India to spend time with Mother Teresa when she was alive. And he worked with Mother Teresa, and one of the things he did is he gathered the street children one day a week, kids who live by begging, 8, 9, and 10-year-old kids. And they beg on the streets. And he said, I wanted them to feel like they were children, so at least once a week they would gather up to 100 street children. They would feed them. They would play games. They would just kind of remind them that there's a little more to life. And one of the kids he got to know told him one day, today's my birthday. And Shane thought, I'm going to do something special for him. And he went out into the neighborhood, came back, and he had an ice cream cone, and he presented him with an ice cream cone. One kid in 100 with an ice cream cone. And the kid said, it's my birthday. And he gathered everybody else. He said, get in a line. Everybody gets one lick. Why didn't he build bigger barns? Why didn't he say, it's my birthday, it's all about me? How did he know generosity was the way of God? Wow. Our Methodist founder, John Wesley, preached about the use of money in a sermon titled just that, The Use of Money, 300 years ago. And he said to us, Methodists, he said, money in the hands of God's children, it's food for the hungry. It's drink for the thirsty. It's clothing for the naked. By our money, we may be a defense for the oppressed, a means of health for the sick, and ease to them who are in pain. It may be as eyes to the blind and feet to the lame. It's a lifter up from the gates of death. There is an expectation that we will use our giving, our generosity, to change the world and build community. I think there's a powerful relationship between our true spiritual condition and our attitude and actions concerning money and possessions. Pastor Professor Father John Hoghay says, we read the gospel as if we have no money, and we spend our money as if we know nothing of the gospel. Wow. Now, I get that sometimes we freak out in church when the church talks about money. Actually, Kathy and I kind of freak out about it when we talk about it in our marriage. We don't like to talk about money. We don't even like to talk about it when we go to the people who manage like our retirement. I always tell them when we leave, we don't believe a thing you told us. We never think there's enough, right? How do you take a step toward generosity? So a couple things to always remember. Giving is always about the heart. So I would say to you, if you come to a church, whether it's this one or any other church, and they're talking about money, they're asking you to make a pledge, they're asking you to put God first, and you find yourself squirming, maybe you need to sit back and go, what's that about? Why does this make me anxious? Maybe I need to not participate right now. But I would tell you that the scripture, the Bible, teaches us to put God first in our giving and to give proportionately and to grow in our giving, and that's just part of our life. For God so loved the world that he didn't give. Is that what it said? So God so loved the world, he gave. Giving's just part of who God is. So how do we make giving a part of who we are? Let me give you a couple action steps as we think about it. I like to use the ladder in this because it gives us a little bit of a visual and makes you think about how to get started. The first one is always the easiest one, which is if you're not giving regularly, start. Start. Figure out your beginning, whether that's $10 a week or $10 a month or $100 a week or $500. Start. You just start. Get on that first step. That's the first step. It's a beginning. We use a ladder in our life as a tool to reach things we can't reach without it, to do things we can't do without it. Giving consistently does that. It allows you to become generous, perhaps for the first time in your life. So start where you can. Only you know where that is. Start where you can. What you feel like you can do. That might mean you sign up to give electronically, either through the church or through your bill pay at your bank. Why electronically? Because here's what happens. When you sign up electronically, you give consistently. You'll give whatever you set up. Once a month, once a week, you'll give consistently. And that'll take you a step toward generosity. Here's the second step. So beginning here, second step is a growth step. It's a little scarier. You're a little higher up, right? But you can do more. And the growth step is saying, I want to grow in the percentage that I've been giving. Maybe you're like Kathy and I, you say, oh, we set up our electronic giving 7 years ago. Great. Has it increased since then? Have you given an increase in your giving? Did you set it and forget it, which at one level is beautiful. At another level, that means your gift is less than it used to be. So what would it take? What is the next step in your giving? You may notice on the envelope at the bottom, it says, do you want to increase your gift 3%, 5%, 10%? I was buying a coffee the other day down in Hyde Park, and after I signed for my coffee, it was like, do you want to give a tip? And it was 25, 30, or 35%. And I went, whoa, okay, I'm learning generosity, I thought. I remember when we first started tipping, I thought 10% was a lot till my kids worked in food service and went, Dad, that's a terrible tip. And I was like, really? And they were like, yeah, 20%, Dad's minimum. And I was like, really? And then we go, God says give 10%. And we go, really? Wow, that's a lot. Start where you can. Giving's about the heart. First step, beginning step. Second step, a growth step. Well, what's the third one? Third one's generosity. It's a little scary because you get up here and you're like, I hope it don't fall. But you're not on the top. You're not freaking out. You're not up here where it says this is not a step. So you don't have to go all the way up. Generosity is when you say, God, what do you want to do through me? Where you can't help but say, I just want to do more. I want to do more. Maybe you've been tithing. Kathy and I have been tithing for years, and I looked at the envelope and went, oh, well, we're still going to have to, what's our increase? Is it 3? Is it 5? Is it 10? What's our increase? Because God has continued to bless us. You might be thinking, well, wait a minute, I need to talk to my spouse. I need to think through my family with this. That's fine. Take it home. That's why it's an envelope. You can mail it back. But we do want you to take one of the books, have some cake today, celebrate. We do want to see like 25 new beginnings where people go, for the first time, I'm going to put God first, and I'm going to sign up for giving online. We do want to see about 100 families say, we're going to make an increase, and we're going to continue to say, God, we want to grow. We want to make that growth step, and even the step of generosity. What's God doing in your heart?
Thank you for that good word, Pastor Duane. As part of the series, we have mailed out pledge cards to members of the Cathedral. If you didn't get one, you can pick up a physical copy at either of our campuses, or you can email communications@boisefumc.org to have one sent to you. When you get your pledge card, you'll see lines for different ministries at Cathedral. We're asking, what do you plan to give to these ministries over the course of the next year? What generosity goals are you striving towards? What can we expect from you weekly? These cards are essential to Cathedral's budgeting and planning, so please fill it out and return it as accurately as you can. And if you have questions, don't be afraid to email communications@boisefumc.org so we can answer them for you. Hey, thanks for joining us today. I hope you all have a great week, and remember, all means all.